I'm 97 years old. I've buried friends. I buried my husband. And I've outlived 2 of my siblings. When you reach my age, people stop asking what you plan to do next. They start asking what it was like. What was it like to love, to lose, to raise children, to work hard, to wake up one morning and realize most of your life is already behind you? And I'll tell you something no one told me when I was 50. Time does not slow down just because you finally decide to pay attention. If that already feels familiar to you, then maybe this is a good moment to sit still for a few minutes and think about your own life. When I was young, I thought life was long. When I reached middle age, I told myself I still had plenty of time. Now I know something with absolute certainty. Most of what we worry about never mattered. And most of what truly mattered, we postponed. I grew up during years when people didn't have much, but we had structure. Breakfast at the same kitchen table, church on Sundays, neighbors who knew your name and didn't hesitate to knock on your door. I married at 21. I believed love alone would carry to people through anything. I was wrong. And I was right. Love isn't something that carries you. It's something you choose, over and over again. In the kitchen, in hospital rooms, in the quiet after an argument when no one wants to speak first. I wish someone had told me that sooner. I spent too many years waiting to feel something instead of deciding to build it. In my 50s, I started noticing a shift. The children were grown. The house felt quieter. My husband worked long hours. I began to feel invisible in rooms I once filled with energy. I thought that meant I wasn't important anymore. That was my first mistake. There's a difference between being noticed and being valuable. I confused the two. If you're in your 50s or 60s right now, listen carefully. The world may stop applauding you. That doesn't mean you're finished. It means you're finally free from performing. I wasted years worrying about what people thought of me. Whether I was aging well, whether I had done enough, whether I had chosen wisely. At 97, I can promise you this. No one is thinking about you as much as you imagine they are. Everyone is fighting something quietly. I remember standing in front of the mirror at 58, gently pulling the skin at my jawline back, just a little, wondering where the younger woman had gone. The fear wasn't about wrinkles. It was about unfinished living. Aging wasn't the problem. Regret was. And regret, my dear, is heavier than age. We spend so much of our lives trying to be responsible that we forget to be alive. In my 40s and 50s, I measured my worth by how useful I was, how much I could do for others, how dependable I appeared. I believed exhaustion was proof of love. At WSN single quotes T. Exhaustion was proof that I didn't know how to rest without guilt. No one teaches women of my generation how to rest. We were taught to endure, to manage, to stretch $1, to stretch our patience, to stretch ourselves so thin that there was barely anything left. If I could go back, I would tell myself this: your life is not a reward you earn after suffering. It is something you are allowed to live while you are still strong. I was afraid of disappointing people, afraid of saying no, afraid that if I stopped being everything for everyone, I would be nothing. But the truth is, the people who truly love you don't disappear when you set boundaries. The ones who leave were only benefiting from your silence. That's what people misunderstand about growing old. We aren't as afraid of dying as you think. We're afraid of wasted years. I didn't speak to my sister for 6 years over something small. Pride kept us apart. 6 years feels enormous to me now. Back then, I thought it was nothing. Time feels inexpensive when you assume you have more of it. I also neglected my health for too long. I fed everyone else first. I scheduled everyone else's appointments. I told myself I'd rest next month. Next month quietly became next year. The body keeps track, even when you don't. Self-sacrifice without boundaries slowly turns into resentment. And resentment poisons the very people you thought you were protecting. In my 60s, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. That word changes the temperature in a room. Suddenly dishes don't matter. Old arguments don't matter. Neighborhood gossip doesn't matter. One evening he squeezed my hand and said, "We should have taken more trips. We talked about traveling for 20 years. We were waiting for the right time. There is no perfect time. There is only the time you choose." After he passed, I lived alone for the first time in 43 years. The silence was unbearable at first. Then it became clarifying. When the noise of expectations fades, you finally hear your own voice. In my 70s, I did something unexpected. I started painting. Not well at first, but it made me feel alive. And it shocked me how long I had waited to do something simply because I loved it. Most people abandon themselves in the name of responsibility. Responsibility matters, but so does your inner life. If you silence it for decades, one day you wake up and don't recognize yourself. I also learned something about friendship. In youth, friendships are built on proximity. In later years, they're built on intention. Fewer people, deeper conversations. I've lost many friends over time, some to distance, some to misunderstanding, some to death. If you still have someone you can call and speak honestly with, you are wealthier than you realize. And please, don't let small pride rob you of long companionship. Fear doesn't disappear as you grow older. It simply changes shape. When you're young, you fear failure. In middle age, you fear irrelevance. In old age, you fear dependency. Learning to accept help was one of the hardest lessons for me. But needing help does not erase your dignity. It reveals your humanity. Your life does not have to look impressive to be meaningful. We confuse visibility with value. Some of the most profound lives are lived quietly. At funerals, no one talks about job titles. They talk about kindness, patience, laughter, whether you made them feel safe. If you're building a life around impressing others, you're building it on sand. At 97, my hands tremble slightly when I hold my tea. My steps are slower. My hearing isn't what it once was. But my clarity? It's sharper than ever. I don't regret getting older. I regret not trusting myself sooner. I regret apologizing for things that didn't require apology. Waiting for permission to change. Believing my worth was tied to productivity. You are not your job. You are not your title. You are not a machine. You are a human being passing through a limited window of time. If I could sit across from my 50-year-old self, I would say this: stop postponing joy. Stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. Stop shrinking to fit spaces that don't honor you. Call the person. Take the trip. Rest your body. Tell the truth. Laugh out loud. Because one day you'll wake up and realize most of your life is behind you. And what will comfort you won't be perfection. It will be how fully you allowed yourself to live. I'm 97 years old. I've lived through wars, recessions, technological revolutions, and heartbreak. The world has changed more than I ever imagined, but the essentials haven't changed at all. Love deeply. Forgive quickly. Care for your body. Protect your peace. Choose courage over comfort. And never assume you have more time than you do. If this reflection resonated with you, stay with us. There's still so much we can learn together. And if you're listening while you still have strength in your body and years ahead of you, then maybe you're not too late.